Electric vehicles are causing quite the disaster in the car market, and we have to talk about it because it's a mess. But before we dive into that, I do want to point out that anytime that I point out anything negative about electric vehicles here on my channel, EV fans come out in droves to defend electric cars. And these are videos that typically get significantly more dislikes than my normal car content. And so I want to point out that the topics that I'm going to be discussing in this video are not my personal opinion. And more importantly, I'm one of you now.
One of us, Google gobble, one of us. We accept that one of us, Google gobble, one of us.
Because 2.5 weeks ago, I bought a 2021 Tesla Model 3 Performance as my new daily driver, and I purchased this car for $26,000. And I really enjoyed the car, and overall, I've been pretty impressed. But even me, a newly inducted member of the Tesla Owners Club, I can admit that the EV market as a whole is a mess. Earlier this year, Hertz announced that they were selling off their Teslas in their fleet due to higher than expected repair costs as well as weak demand as the reason. This was after Hertz agreed to buy 100,000 EVs from Tesla, and Hertz also had an agreement with GM to buy EVs from them too. And as a result of this plan, Hertz was going to become the largest EV rental fleet in the entire world. But this obviously didn't pan out, and in January of this year, they announced that they were not only selling 20,000 Teslas, but they were selling them to buy gas cars. Now, when it comes to why Tesla has decided to offload their EV fleet, as I mentioned a moment ago, the predominant reason was repair costs. According to a report done in Q4 of last year, the average repair cost of an average Tesla is $5,552, while the average cost of a non-Tesla EV is $4,474, and for a combustion gas vehicle, it's $4,205. So on average, the damaged Tesla costs $1,347 more to repair than a damaged gas car, but they also cost $269 more than a non-Tesla EV. And while cost of repairs was definitely the largest factor, also time of repairs was a factor as well. And Teslas in general do take longer to repair than gas cars and non-Tesla EVs. And of course, in the rental game, time is money. And the longer that your car is sitting in order to get repaired, the more money that you're losing. And of course, as I mentioned a moment ago, demand was also a factor. And the demand associated with renting an EV or a Tesla just wasn't as high as Hertz expected it to be. And well, to make matters worse on this whole Hertz-Tesla EV fiasco, just this week, Hertz CEO Stephen Scherr resigned. This was after Hertz suffered wider than expected losses in Q4 of last year, posting a net loss of $348 million. They also posted a negative 17% margin, and depreciation on cars reached a whopping $498 per month, more than double the previous year of $242 per month. And this was Hertz's biggest quarterly loss since 2020. And well, the reasoning behind the CEO's resignation comes down to everything that I just mentioned, which ultimately comes down to the botched execution and rollout of EVs and Teslas within Hertz. And when you look at the depreciation figure I just mentioned, it makes a lot of sense because Hertz is currently offloading their Tesla fleet, and man, these things are cheap. We actually looked at buying a Tesla from Hertz before we decided to just go private party on Facebook, but man, these Teslas are cheap, and I imagine that they are losing a ton of money on each and every one of these. But the thing is, Hertz isn't the only one getting thrown into a tizzy by the EV market. We, of course, have automaker after automaker scaling back outlook, double backing on their EV pledges, and even a number of them are pivoting towards hybrids. And this is all due to lower demand for EVs. But just this week, the EPA announced its strongest ever vehicle pollution standards in U.S. history, and according to the EPA website, on March 20th, 2024, the EPA announced a final rule, the multi-pollutant emission standards for model years 2027 and later, light-duty and medium-duty vehicles. This sets new, more productive standards to further reduce harmful air pollutant emissions from light-duty and medium-duty vehicles starting with model year 2027. Now, this is different than the EPA's original rule, which was not only more aggressive in its standard, but was also more aggressive in its timeline. The original rule was extremely aggressive for EVs, but it also really excluded hybrids from the equation altogether, or at least it definitely didn't account for them properly. And this new rule that the EPA has announced would make it so that the timeline is a little bit less strict, and automakers can now choose what proportion they want their production to be for EVs and hybrids based off of their consumer demand. So it basically doesn't force an automaker to produce EVs just for the sake of meeting this criteria, and they could instead produce hybrids if their consumer-based demands that. And with this new EPA rule, the EPA stated, these technology-neutral and performance-based standards give the auto industry the flexibility to choose the combination of pollution pollution control technologies best suited for their customers. And the EPA used this example scenario to show us how that could look. Automakers might seek to comply with the 2032 requirements by boosting battery electric vehicles to 56% of total U.S. sales, with a penetration for plug-in hybrids at 13% and conventional combustion engine cars at 29%. And keep in mind, this is for 2032, which really isn't that far away. And as we stand here today, EVs only make up 8% of total car sales and hybrids only make up 2%. So this is quite aggressive, all things considered, even if it is technically scaled back from that original rule. And you can see here a breakdown of what the rule was versus what it has become according to Bloomberg. Now, don't get it twisted, this rule, despite the fact that it was revised, was still met with quite a lot of criticism. For example, Toyota stated, serious challenges around affordability, charging infrastructure, and supply chain will need to be addressed before this mandate is realized, while the National Automobile Dealer Association stated that they're highly skeptical that consumers will adopt EVs anywhere near the levels required. And again, while this rule change is considered a scaled-back version and it is being met with criticism, this rule change has gone into effect in its current form because of the fact that EV demand just isn't really where anybody expected it would be. It is significantly lower. But truthfully, when you look up this bill online, it's almost always touted as a bill that would boost EV demand. But I think to the point of both Toyota as well as the National Automobile Dealer Association, EVs aren't at a fork in the road because of automakers' unwillingness to manufacture and produce EVs. But instead, it's because consumer skepticism to buy them. Maybe if boosting EV demand was a top priority, rather than targeting regulation to require EVs to be produced, lawmakers should instead rework that EV tax credit, which is convoluted and leaves out many of the EVs that people actually want to buy. Or maybe they should focus more on building out better charging networks, because range anxiety is the #1 reason Americans don't want to buy an EV. Or maybe work to make cars more affordable, because the average American can't afford the average new car, let alone the average EV, which is on average more expensive than the gas car equivalent. But what do I know? The point is, it's no secret that the EV market is an absolute mess, and we're seeing the byproduct of this pretty consistently. From Hertz offloading their Tesla fleet to the Hertz CEO stepping down as a result, from the EPA changing their rules and standards to more accurately reflect the current EV market, even the horrendous EV depreciation is a sign that this market is lofty at best. And the truth is, I don't know that anybody, including lawmakers and automakers, know exactly where the EV market is trending. I know that I certainly don't, but I certainly will be watching from the sidelines, and really only time will tell. But like always, you guys, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions, comments, if you have anything to add, I would love to hear it, so make sure to leave a comment down below. And while you guys are at it, make sure to hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, and hit that notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.